Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, guys. I like totally forgot that it was CPI today. I even put it in the title and then I went to go and eat and just like completely spaced it. So I'm sitting there at the kitchen table, you know, and I can kind of see the computer from the kitchen table. And like the E-mini is just like moving a ton. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Oh, wait. CPI was 5 minutes ago. Oh my gosh. I gotta get. So it looks like they liked the CPI though, huh? Let's see here. Core CPI. They were looking for a reading of spot 2 versus, oh, no. They were looking for a reading of spot 2 and they were looking for spot 3 and they got spot 2. Excuse me. And for US CPI, they got spot 3 versus an expected spot 4. So very, very good. You were long. Well, that was, I'm glad that you made money, but that was a little bit, degenerate, don't you think? holding a trade through the biggest data point in the last 2 months, like when you're. So let's go back to Uzi's comment here, though. How the hell do we get no data from the government all month except for CPI? I know, right? Like the wild thing about it is that isn't the CPI the number that everybody's been complaining that like half of the number is made up because they don't have enough people, that they're not actually tracking all of the products? Because I keep seeing these people saying, no, inflation is actually much, much higher than they're saying because this, that, and the other. And then the numbers keep coming out and they keep being around spot 2, spot 3. So why are we able to get CPI out? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's strategic. I would hope it's strategic. I would hope that they would go through and they would be like, well, looking at the data that we have right now, it looks like there's not really any inflation. And it would be really important for us to be able to get that out to the market, because that's concerns about inflation is probably the one thing that would prevent the Federal Reserve from normalizing interest rates and or giving us accommodative interest rates so that we can weather the economic storms that are going on right now. So let's put out that CPI so that everybody can see that the inflation is really not coming and that tariffs are, in fact, deflationary ultimately. Reportedly, the data was collected before lapses in appropriation. Well, there you go. But at the same time, we really need a jobs report, man. Like, yeah. So if the government shut, well, so we're pretty confident at this point that it's not going to end before the end of October. In all seriousness, I think it might not be until February. I mean, that's just like a really wild guess, but I'm just thinking, well, what is there to force them to do it before the end of the year? I don't see it. And then, you know, so then maybe in the new year, maybe they decide that they should shift and give them a month to do that, you know. But, and not to scare you or anything, but I also think there is a scenario that is not that unlikely. Like let's say 20% chance that it just never ends. After the Virginia elections, the Democrats will let it open? Like the thing that concerns me. Here's the thing. I'm pausing a little bit because to make the point that I'm making, I kind of have to insult somebody. And I kind of hate making it about personalities. I try to take a different approach to politics, right? Because I think most of us, when we think about politics, you think, okay, what do I think it should be? What policy do I think is the best policy? Which politician do I think would be the best leader, etc., etc., etc. And I try to have what I would call a creative approach to thinking about these sorts of things, which is, and in order to have that creative approach, you have to let go of the ego. You have to let go of the, well, I want to be right about things, and so I need to come in and look at this from the perspective of, what is right. And instead approach it from the perspective of what is actually going to happen, right? And so some of this like, attacking certain politicians and stuff, I think is kind of counterproductive to that kind of approach. But it's just what's going on here, okay? So here's the issue. This is basically happening because of AOC. As far as I can tell, she is the one that thought that this was a good idea and basically held leadership's feet to the fire. And it was basically like, if you don't do this, we might take your leadership away. And maybe they would try to make AOC House minority leader. Who knows? And there's even been like, well, if Republicans want to talk about it, they can come by my office and negotiate with me, is what she's been saying. It's her thing. Like, she is kind of publicly taking credit for it. And here's the problem. AOC is not a strategic thinker, man. She is not a strategic thinker. She is an ideologue. I don't think that she really understands complex systems at all. She is just kind of chasing the thing that's right in front of her. And now that they have kind of pulled the trigger and they're in on this, like, what is going to convince her to relent? I don't think, at that point, because I don't think she's the type that can let go of her ego and really judge all of the different solutions here and what is actually going to happen, and then use all of that information to make a sound strategic decision about where things are going. No, what's going to happen is she's going to say, well, if we give in, then this was all for nothing, and I lose and I was wrong. And she's never going to allow that to happen. So there really could be a scenario where the government just doesn't come back up. That their government remains shut down until either there's another election, Republicans make a carve out in the filibuster, something like that. Like it stays shut down until the next presidential elections, or it stays shut down until, well, I guess I don't think that there would be a situation where Republicans would get a 60 vote majority, so it would just stay. It would stay shut down until 2028, which is a little scary to think about, right? But like, that is what's supposed to happen. is like, we don't have the money. and honestly, the Trump administration has found legal maneuvers that basically allow them to avoid the most painful consequences of a shutdown. I think that they can keep the government shut down and be kind of okay with it. Like honestly, has it been that bad? I don't know. One of the things I heard from somebody the other day was that their company was told not to hire anybody because the E-Verify system was down. So that's a little concerning. But otherwise, what forces them to do it, you know? Welcome to Dem State Problems. I do it my way or no way. I finally found a good comparison for Illinois. Remember how Kamala got put into power out of nowhere and people told they voted? You know, some of these things really are like the way that the political story has gone really since 2016 has been wild, but since 2023 in particular, like the whole year of 2024 was just bonkers. And if you told me that this is what was going to happen, like way back, like 2004 is kind of like where I think of as the beginning of the saga. That was kind of like when Bush was still in, and like there was the whole Iraq war thing, right? And kind of what happened is that issue kind of died down and people were reacting to that, and everything that has happened since then was in some way the United States people's reaction to the Iraq war, right? But if you had told me that this is how it would have evolved, there's no way I would have believed it, because Democrats are just a completely different party, you know? I don't remember voting for nearly anything in the last 10 years. Now, I really think it is. Like, I was thinking about this yesterday, with Trump in particular, because the truth is, and I really hate this argument when I see people use it, because from a Republican perspective, okay, Trump has not been a bad representative for Republicans in particular, and even for conservatives. He's not conservative, but I think that conservatives are okay with what he's done. Like the issue is, there's a lot of things about his rhetoric, and there's definitely things about his methods in particular. I think a lot of the things that Republicans don't like about Trump is the method. It's not the conservative method. And it's kind of like, you know, slash and burn and do what I want. And then Democrats are like, oh, he's trying to be a dictator. But I really think that he's just going from the perspective of, well, this is what they do and this is what effective, so that's what I'm going to go and do. But the reality is, he is not really a conservative or even really a Republican in the traditional sense. Like if I look at, okay, what would be like the ideal conception of this party, right? I kind of feel like that with Barack Obama and the Democrat Party. Well, Barack Obama has become the Democrat Party, but I don't actually feel that that Barack Obama really genuinely reflects what most Democrats believe. I think that I believe that Democrats kind of molded themselves to Obama because he had that that personality, and he kind of shifted things. But that in reality, a lot of what Obama did was just like objectively against what liberals always told me that they believed all while I was a kid. Because liberals were always the ones that were like, you know, you can't stop and frisk. That was the big issue at the time. Stop and frisk is wrong. We need to be able to, we need to protect people's freedom of speech. We shouldn't be spying on people. They were about protecting liberties. And Obama basically didn't do, basically ignored all of those things and allowed the state to continue expanding its power. So I don't think Barack Obama is a good analog. I think that in my mind, the ideal Democrat Party representative is still Bill Clinton. He was probably their most effective president. I think that Bill Clinton and what Bill Clinton did in office in particular better reflects where most Democrats are. Okay. Aside from the far left, right? And if I were to say like who is the ideal Republican, it's probably Ronald Reagan, right? Okay, and I don't really have to dive too deep into that one, right? Everybody knows that Republicans love Ronald Reagan. Okay, so now back to Trump. I think that Donald Trump is more like Bill Clinton than he is Ronald Reagan. And that's kind of weird. You know. Yell and scream big complaints, not realizing you are projecting the claims. Non-voting states like Illinois feel more like a dictatorship since you know the people don't have the choice. I think Donald Trump is the orange wizard. Newsom. My God. You know, so it's so crazy to me that Newsom... Okay, like again, I try to place myself as like, what is going to happen? Okay, but I certainly have my biases and my own political beliefs. Newsom, it seems to me that in terms of like who's the top runners for 2028, it really seems to me like Newsom is it, right? Like it's gonna be Kamala Harris will probably run again. Newsom will run. I wouldn't surprise me if AOC would run. And then probably a bunch of other has-beens. I'm kind of a little bit skeptical if some of these other has-beens like Beto and those guys run again. Because I think that they would like to, but it might get down to it that they really, they did so poorly last time that they don't really have the donor support to do it, So like, of those people, who is the most likely to make it through Democrat primary process and become the nominee? It really seems to me like it is Gavin Newsom, right? And I just can't imagine Gavin Newsom winning a presidential election. What he does just feels so obviously fake to me. Like everything about him, it just seems like a blatant, transparent, gambit to win people's support. That I just don't think anybody buys it. It's like a really, really terrible Mitt Romney, like the whole thing with Mitt Romney was he says what you want him to say so that he can get elected, and maybe he doesn't actually have any underlying principles, right? Whereas Gavin Newsom is like, I think he's like straight up just trying to hide what he really thinks, because he knows that like he'd never become president with doing that. And then on top of that, like seriously, the rest of the country has been watching California and thinks that what's going on in California is terrible. So the last thing that they want is to make the rest of the country like California. So I think it would be a huge mistake to make Gavin the nominee. But really, what's the alternative? I know, Ben Shapiro. I think Ben Shapiro would probably be their, like, in terms of who would win the general election right now, probably their best pick. Maybe he runs and he could win. We'll see. How will Trump, what's this? I feel like Trump is going to try and hold on to power. I don't think so. Yes. So something that goes on in the Trump administration is there will be some legal theory about things. And they'll be like, yeah, when it comes up, they'll say, yeah, there's a legal theory about that. We don't necessarily want to reveal it, but we, and that's really what they're getting at. Okay. But I think it's more complex than that. The Republican Party wouldn't support him at that point. It would be too damaging. So I think that all of the incentives. So here's the thing is like, if you want to understand what is likely to happen, one of the best frameworks to look at that is, what are the incentives? Like, that's exactly what we're doing when we're trying to predict when will the shutdown end. And what I'm saying is the incentives that ended shutdowns in the past are no longer at work. And so that might mean that this shutdown might last a really, really long time. Because essentially, the only thing that could possibly incentivize them to end the shutdown is if it really, really significantly starts to hurt the support of one party. Most likely the Democrats. And even then, it's kind of like, well, Democrats are already kind of down in the dumps and everybody hates them. So how much worse can it get, right? Okay. Well, so this is the same thing with Donald Trump trying to run for a third term, right? Like if he leaves, he basically gets to be kingmaker and have a prominent position in the Republican Party forever and a top legacy and all of these sorts of things. And if he really makes a true, like, I think that there could be a thing where they kind of have like they throw out trial balloons and things like that, but then it fizzles and it doesn't really actually happen. But if he makes like a genuine attempt to run again for a third term, all of that changes, and he will be a pariah to even the Republican Party. So I think it's very unlikely that they actually do it. But they're always going to come in and say, like, maybe there's a way around that because they think that they have that legal theory. And they don't want anybody to, like, poo-poo their political theory. Because, like, if they did do their political theory, and then it goes to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court is going to say, well, except for that, when you were asked about this in 2025, you said that the president can't serve 3 terms. So even you didn't believe this at that time, right? So he has to say it to keep it alive. That's why they play onto that. And yeah, if he does that, then 4-year presidential terms really will be set in stone. At the same time, and here's the other thing. Who's going to be the guy on the Republican side? It's almost certainly going to be J.D. Vance. That's always been the way that Republicans go, is whoever was the vice president has a very, very high probability of becoming being the top nominee the next time around. So there's the historical precedent, and the Republicans really, really love everything that J.D. Vance has been saying and doing. And he's the one guy, I think, over there that seems to bridge the gap between traditional Republicans and Trump Republicans really well. So he keeps the coalition together. It's probably going to be J.D. Vance. And I don't think that any of the Democrats that we've talked about stand a chance against J.D. Vance, man. Unless, of course, he screws up or there's some big game-changing event. But just based on the strength of the individuals and their political skills, it would be a J.D. Vance. It would be, and it could very likely be 8 years of J.D. Vance, which, if we're honest, is really basically just another 8 years of Trump. So brace yourself. I gotta tell you, especially people on the left, but I think these traditional Republicans that are I mean, I think it's a broader coalition than this, but let's just start with the never Trump Republicans. But I would extend that to even the people more like me that are like traditional Republicans, don't like everything that Trump does, but, going along with it or whatever. The things that you don't like I don't like this kind of abuse executive power wherever we possibly can sort of a thing. But I think the situation is, when you go and you look at the incentives and everything, is that the global power structures have changed. I think one of the biggest ones here is that the key resource is now becoming rare earth minerals. And getting rare earth minerals often involves dealing with shady places. Right? Like, we're getting all of the cobalt from these cobalt mines in Africa that are just like, the conditions are nightmare. The conditions are a nightmare. But it's like, in order to get the resources, countries have to deal with these kind of shady power brokers. And so the reality of the shift in the global political landscape is such that presidents are more incentivized to use their executive power and abuse their executive power. On top of that, Congress just can't get anything done, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Right? So a lot of these things that we don't like are going to continue to happen. And it's best to acknowledge that change and start thinking about how we're going to have to adjust to that now. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is, because the next thing that's going to happen is they are going to start coming for your freedom of speech, man. I'm telling you, like, straight up right now, it's that they're going to start coming for. Like, I don't think that Trump will, but, and I trust J.D. Vance, but then, like, after that, you're going to be concerned about that. That's just the way things are going. So we got to prepare ourselves for it, for when that battle comes, right? The court that gave us Dred Spot and Korematsu isn't exactly known for letting explicit constitutional text get in the way of desired political. Well, the Supreme Court is definitely shifting a lot of things too. Things that Republicans, it's kind of funny because, like, Democrat, like, especially if you go on the law subreddit, oh man, that place has become basically just an anti-Trump subreddit. And they hate the changes that the conservative Supreme Court has been making because it breaks the precedents that they already had. But the whole thing was that Republicans never felt that those precedents were constitutional. So but I mean, there is a problem. I think the reality is that society has changed and is changing so fast, and it's hard to make changes to the Constitution. It's really hard to make changes to the Constitution. You really need an overwhelming majority of people thinking that an issue is a thing to get, you know, and so we are absolutely dealing with an issue where our laws and our system of doing things is not necessarily completely up to the task. You know, that is why a lot of these laws kind of came out that way. Like the whole what do we call this, regulation state, right? I think is a reflection of that you don't have enough expertise, nor is in Congress, nor is Congress responsive and quick enough to be able to react to things and do stuff. And so they have created this fourth state in regulatory agencies, right? And now the conservative Supreme Court is coming in and taking those down. I don't know what fills that void now, you know? Not that I'm saying that was the right way or the wrong way. It's just, okay, I see a vacuum there. This in regard to a third term, though? So I also think, though, that if he ran for a third term and it went to the Supreme Court, that they would probably deny him. I think they absolutely would. But I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. There's honestly, one of the things is, you know, he says things to upset people, right? It's really funny the way that it works, because a lot of what happens is, okay, like this Canada thing today. This is a really good example of this. Okay, Canada used AI to make this video with Ronald Reagan saying stuff about about tariffs, probably to try and affect negotiations and tariffs and things like that. And you know, that's the sort of a thing that's like, well, I don't appreciate them doing that, but most people, they're going to be prone to saying, that's not the way that Donald Trump functions. The way that Donald Trump functions is, here's the outcome that I want, and here are the pressure points that I can use to get that outcome. So, and it doesn't matter how small or trivial of a thing it is, and whether or not they should overlook it or not. If he can flip those switches and it helps his position, he does it every time. It is a true. I call this the mafia theory. I think that the best way to explain Donald Trump's behavior, like his approach to politics, is to understand that his mentor was basically a lawyer for the mob, and that all of the tactics and political tactics that he learned essentially came from the mob. And this is this almost nihilistic approach to power. If you want something, here are the effective ways to get it, and it doesn't matter how unsavory it is. Not that I think Trump is like killing anybody out there to get his way or anything, but there's probably a limit for him. But especially for these things, that's like, okay, I can go and say this, and some people will think that I'm mean on Twitter, but it will get me what I want. Yeah, hell yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's how he approaches things. And now that the cat's out of the bag, that's probably the way that most future presidents deal. That stupid constitution gets in the way of things that we need done to us. Anyways, I really don't think a third term is likely to happen. I bet you. Is there a poly market for this? I bet you if there's a poly market for this, that the probability is really low. Okay, it is way higher than I thought it would be. 5% sounds right. What was it that he said? Did he say something in the past day that has changed this? All right, what did they say? Steve Bannon reveals there is a plan for a Trump third term. Nah, I think you sell that one. I don't know if the risk reward is really worth it. I don't know. You sell 15, you buy it back at 5. Maybe not 5, maybe like 6. Sell it back at 6. Let's see what Bannon's specific comments were. In an interview with The Economist, Bannon told the magazine's editors he's going to get a third term. Trump's 28. Trump is going to be president 28, so people just ought to get accommodated to that. When asked by editor-in-chief Zanny Milton Beddoes about 22nd Amendment, Bannon replied, there's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and the president will be president in 2020. I don't believe him. You know what? I don't trust Bannon at all. So I'm sure that there is a plan, like that they have discussed. Here's this political maneuver, legal maneuver that we think we can pull off that will give Trump a third term. But I think that Bannon is mistaken about how serious they actually are about pursuing that, and the politics of how it would play out if they tried it. So I can totally get people buying it there, but man, you gotta be kidding me. You know what? I apologize, because didn't one of you guys mention Bannon's comments earlier? Like, I didn't realize that that's why you were bringing it up, because it's not the first time that Bannon has said anything like that. Although I think that his comments this time go a little bit differently, because he's basically like, it will happen. It's already being planned. Yeah, okay. I think he's mistaken though. I still think that the chances of it happening are 3%, 5%. Well, actually, okay, you know what I think is funny about these sorts of things is that the question that society asks is usually not nuanced enough. Like, we ask, will AI replace us? That question is not nuanced enough, because there's like different levels of it, right? And like, at what level, once you start getting into like betting markets and like the legal rules about what is defined as a yes and a no is kind of a little bit like, okay. So Trump announcing a run for a third term, I don't think that one is unlikely. That he would, like, especially if he were to come out and say, just like during an interview, yeah, I'm going to run for a third term. I think that that's something that's actually maybe more likely to happen than not. Right? Okay. And then the next step, I think, would be that he actually files the papers, right? Because you have to like file to run for president and all of those sorts of things. I think that one is more unlikely than not. But I think that there is still a chance there that like he files to run and like it's not necessarily a serious thing. Like, they're like, well, we can, that's like part of floating the trial balloon could be him filing to run. Right. So does Trump just saying something on a talk show mean it resolves to yes? Kind of feel like, yeah, that could. But filing is a different threshold, right? And then there's like the next threshold, which is like he starts actively campaigning. So what I'm saying is I think that they might float the trial balloon and talk about things. And what will happen is if he really announces it or if he really files, Republicans will recoil at that so hard that like that trial balloon will die so quickly that he would give up before he really spent a lot of effort on it. That's kind of what I'm saying. Then the situation where like he runs, he campaigns, and he runs in the Republican primary and wins the Republican primary. I don't think so. But that one, it would be close. And then where he like runs for a third term and they let him run for a third term, I don't think that would happen. And then they let him run for a third, like they say it's legal for him, and then he runs, and I don't think that he would win. I think at that point, probably another Republican would step up and run against him, and it would be a three-way race. And then you'd have this issue like what they've got going on in New York. Which I tell you what, man, I don't think that I understand New York politics, but I definitely have more like contacts and people that I follow and things like that are in that world. And it's how I want to say agitated these guys are about Mamdani is insane. It is really like for a lot of New Yorkers really feel like Mamdani would be the end. Or rather would be they have to move away from New York. It's crazy. The amount of importance in that race that I see from people. Yeah, I don't think Trump would have the votes on the right if he ran again. I don't think the plurality of Republican voters would do it. Yeah. Like I really think you get to the end of his term, like 2 years from now, and then he's thinking about doing, because like if we're honest, he would love to run for a third term, wouldn't he? He would love to run for a third term. Okay. But I think that when you get to that point, he would look at the polling and everything else for it, and it would scare him away. Absolutely. Let's see here. Is there Trump third term polling? Oh, maybe I'm wrong, guys. Maybe I'm wrong. A majority of Republican voters would support President Donald Trump seeking a constitutionally prohibited third term, according to new polling from Data for Progress. Well, I've never heard of them. Who are they? Pollster ratings. Data for Progress. Nate Silver's thing isn't searchable anymore, so maybe they still have the 538. No. Okay, well, I don't know how trustworthy this polling outfit is. In the survey of 1,247 likely voters conducted last week and provided first to Semaphore found 53% of Republicans in favor of Trump running again in 2028. At the same time, Republicans were less likely than Democrats or independents to think that Trump would try to run again, a bid that would violate the 22nd Amendment and its two-term limit. Let's ask ChatGPT here a question. What possible legal justifications could Trump make to try and run for a third term? Number 1, challenge the applicability of the 22nd Amendment. No person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. Trump could argue that the amendment only bars being elected more than twice, not serving again under unusual circumstances, for example, through succession or appointment. For example, if he were to become Speaker of the House or Vice President, and then the sitting president resigned or died, he could claim that he's not being elected to a third term, merely succeeding to the office. Okay, that could totally work. That would be crazy. Can you imagine? I mean, that would be such a big political, like being able to get the political power to do that sounds extremely unlikely. But like legally speaking, I think it could work. Yeah, lots of moving parts. Yeah, no way. But then, okay. Claim that non-consecutive terms reset the count. He might argue that since his terms were non-consecutive, it should count as starting over. Example justification. The framers of the 22nd Amendment didn't explicitly mention non-consecutive terms, and earlier presidents like Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms. The counter to that would be the amendment's text doesn't distinguish consecutive versus non-consecutives. The total number of elections is what matters, not the timing. 3, argue that the 22nd Amendment is procedurally invalid. He could challenge the amendment itself, claiming it was improperly ratified or violates fundamental rights. Argue that it restricts the democratic rights of voters to choose their leader. Okay. Push for a constitutional amendment. Here, his allies could try to repeal or modify the 22nd Amendment. 5, exploit ambiguities in election certification. If he ran and somehow got elected despite the 22nd Amendment, he could force a constitutional crisis, argue that people's will should override the term limit, force Congress and the Supreme Court to act, potentially framing their intervention as anti-democratic. Well, okay, so this is actually an interesting point that I think you do have to consider. Say Donald Trump runs for president. He likes the polling, whatever the deal is, right? He runs for president, and then they say, no, you can't run for president again, and they sue him and all of these sorts of things, right? And then there's all of these procedural games and things like that, and the Supreme Court says, well, we won't be able to rule on this until after the election. Okay. So then he runs at the top of the ticket. He wins anyways. And then they're going to come in and they're going to say, well, okay, he won, but he can't constitutionally be president, right? And at that point, then you have this issue where it's like, okay, the Supreme Court will have to explicitly disqualify him from being president after he already won the election. How are you going to do that? Like, that's a little dicey for the Supreme Court, right? So, I don't think that it's a likely. I still don't think it's a likely thing to happen, but I could totally see it playing out that way, sort of a thing. Normalizing constitutional violations is just more crazy stuff is literally how this works. Well, I mean, the whole problem here is this. The way that our system works is the system doesn't prevent you from doing the thing. The system says, you're not supposed to do the thing, but if you do the thing, then we have to go through this years-long political legal process, and then we say what you did violated things and you have to change it back, and then we just kind of have to hope that you listen and do the right thing, right? This is exactly what Biden did with paying student loans. He said, we're going to forgive student loans. And then, it was like, what? A year and a half, 2 years before the Supreme Court ruled on it. And then the Supreme Court said, actually, no, that was not the intent of the law. You're in violation of it, right? And then immediately the next day he says, okay, well, I'm doing it again, but this time I'm using this law. Right? And then if Biden had won a second term, it would still be going on, right? Maybe they would come in and they would nix that one, and then he would use they had like 3 or 4 other ways to try and do it, right? So, the administration, when they do this, they say they have a legal justification to it. They're not breaking the law in their opinion, and they aren't breaking the law until the court has ruled on it. That is the way that it works. That is the way that it works. It's kind of a big problem that it works that way, I think, but that's the way that it works. Yeah, there's no constitutional tripwire that actually stops you. And really, the whole thing has been that up until, I would really say George Bush, I really feel like that this started with George Bush. Well, maybe Clinton. I think it was kind of maybe more Clinton. Up until that point, past presidents just restrained themselves. They didn't do that stuff. It absolutely is like Pandora's box has been opened, Like everybody's concerned about Trump, but you watch, mark my words, next Democrat president will do similar things. Because now that they've seen it and see that it works, they're going to want to do it. And all of everything in the system and everything that's going on in the world today kind of creates more incentive to do it, not less. It's interesting that we got on this topic because really we should be talking about inflation, shouldn't we? I am still I tell you what, I think my mood changes a little bit too much from day to day. I read this thing the other day. I don't remember where I was seeing this. But these guys were saying that like when they were looking at like Native American cultures and things like that, when somebody did something really great, like they went on the hunt and they had a big kill on the hunt, and that's like a big prestigious thing to do, right? That when they were done with it, that they would fast the next day. And what these researchers were saying, the point of or why maybe that they started doing that and why it might be useful, is that you're like in fight or flight mode when you're doing these things. And for some reason, when you succeed, the body doesn't want to calm down. It wants to stay in the fight or flight mode because it was in that mode and it was successful in doing something in that mode. So it wants to stay in that mode. And by fasting, you come back down to a baseline faster, and you're less likely to have depression later on when the high wears off and you burn out and things like that. And I kind of feel like I might be going through that. Like if I have an interview, I don't feel like I'm trying super hard or anything like that, but I think that the system is working overdrive. I think that the system is like your entire survival, like the rest of your life depends on this sort of a thing. And so when the interview is done, I am so spent. And so some days I'll have an interview, and like that next day especially, I will feel like down in the pits. And then when I'm not feeling super great, I also don't feel very good about the economy. And then I'll come on here the next morning, and I'll be like, we're totally in a recession right now. Like, what's going on is crazy. We have to be in a recession, right? Like, that's what I was kind of feeling and saying on Wednesday, and now on Friday, I'm kind of like, oh, well, maybe it's not so bad. Except for that, it is kind of bad. Like, I think the reality is that interest rates are way too high and are killing the economy. And if they don't bring interest rates back down quickly enough, it will be a recession if we haven't already passed that point already. But today I'm feeling like, well, maybe we haven't passed that point already and we'll be okay. Inflation's not really coming in. Federal Reserve will keep cutting interest rates. This should be fine. Well, anyways, we were reading a story, weren't we? Where did that go? Oh, I think I closed it. Oh no, it was right here. If 53% of Republicans think that Trump should run in 2028, I might just be dead wrong. You can just ignore everything that I just said. Where are we at on the rate? 3.995? Did I not send that? So the difference is, well, no. So Biden uses the executive authority. The court struck it down, and he stopped. No, what happened is the next day he implemented it. He issued a new presidential order, doing exactly the same thing, citing authority from a different law. So, like, they have this thing where they can use legal maneuvers to keep it going indefinitely, as long as they're president. The outright, like, defiance, like the Supreme Court marks a ruling and then they do, like, oh, okay, you've made the ruling, now enforce it. I can't think of a situation where that's happened recently. Aside from, like, not enforcing immigration laws as forcefully. Well, anyways. Oh yeah, so I was gonna say I fixed my issues. Yes, so the whole trading VPS thing like works. So now I think we got to like get my indicators over there and get like a reasonable strategy. So now maybe I should spend some time next week. I have my next interview is on Tuesdays, and I want to do more preparing for that. So I'll probably spend more of today preparing for that. Well, it's only 7:30. Only 7:30. So we can try looking into that and trying to automate the pulling of the volatility. You know, we didn't even go in and modify it today. Let's do that real quick. Because surely the number from Xian was like higher, right? Probably. I don't know. Does it change during the day? Nah. It says it's 4.95. Well. I think maybe if I had come in the overnight that it would have been higher than that, but was it defiance or compliance when Biden opened the border? So what that was all about was that, man, the history on this is kind of weird because it seems like not the political issue, but like it ended up being like a really paramount important point. But during COVID, they said like like the borders are completely closed. They called it like Title 5 or something. I forget what the number was. Anyways, right. So when Biden became president, you know, people were expecting people to just flood over the border, and it didn't happen right away because they still had that order in place. And then when they tried to get rid of it, I believe that there was a court battle over it. It's them saying like, actually, you can't get rid of it yet. But eventually, you know, it cleared. And then when it was gone away, then sure enough, people started flooding over the border. This one is actually a sore point for me, to be honest with you, because like the amount of illegal immigration during Joe Biden's term was pretty insane. And when you show all of the data to Democrats, they're just like, oh, I don't see what the big deal is. You know, COVID displaced a lot of people. And so there was more people from South America wanting to immigrate up to North America. And that's why they shifted. And it had nothing to do with any of the things that Biden did. Can you believe that? Like, it's so wild to me that anybody could make that argument with a straight face. But I've had many, many liberals try to argue this, that there was nothing wrong with Biden's immigration policy. It didn't encourage immigration, and that the increase in immigration was due to something else. It's so wild. Because when you look at the numbers, it's like during Biden, and then as soon as he's not elected anymore, crashes. But you know what? I think part of the reason why Democrats are having a hard time right now is because they kind of went all in on illegal immigration, and it's collapsing on them now. Like, everybody can see the negative effects of letting it be like a complete open border. And I don't think that anybody in America really likes the way that that was done. And so there doesn't seem to be as much of a political incentive as there was to encourage that illegal immigration. And ergo, Democrats don't get as much support from it. And I think that that's part of why they're struggling so much right now. It's not the same skill as 22nd Amendment. Yeah, I mean, I really think that him running for a third term would be pretty brazen thing. Yeah. But so here's the thing. If it wasn't for all of that crap that happened in Trump's first term, where they basically concocted this false story and prevented Donald Trump from being able to really exercise any executive power because of it, I don't think that if majority of Republicans think he should run for a third term, it's got to be because of that, right? But I'm not sure I trust the polling. I think that if he announced that things would shift, like, I think that what would happen is there would be groups of Republicans, myself included, saying this is such a bad idea. They would probably convince the rest of the Republicans to not, and then he would have to backtrack, right? But that's still kind of the thing that I'm saying is like, well, they're putting out trial balloons already. But if he's smart, he won't run for a third term. Donald Trump will have more power if he doesn't run for a third term. He'll just run in the primary. Yeah, sure. If he doesn't run for a third term, J.D. Vance becomes the nominee, and Donald Trump cements himself as the spiritual leader of the Republican Party. And then after J.D. Vance is president for 8 years, then Donald Trump Jr. will be president for 8 years. like that is the sort of scenario I can envision happening. No one will have the balls to stop him or speak out once he's I think it'll be a different thing if it was they ran again. There's like listen, you ever been in a situation where somebody wants to do something stupid and you're like, well, this is stupid, and they all ignore you, and so you're just like, okay, do what you want, you're gonna find out. And then they find out and they come back to you and you apologize, and you're just like, well, I'm used to it by this point. I know that people are going to do what they're going to do, and there's nothing I can do to stop it, right? Okay, there's that situation. And then there's the situation that's like, okay, what you want to do is stupid. I might not be able to stop you, but this like objectively harms me. So I am not going to have anything to do with you anymore. And I'm going to do everything that I can to try and stop you. Right. And ignoring the 22nd Amendment fits into the latter category. Republicans at that point would step up and say, this will cause irreparable damage to our party if we don't stop it. Actually, you know what? Let me take a different approach to this. I am shocked that 53% of Republicans think that Donald Trump should run for a third term, but I think for it to be a good idea for him to try, which is to say, like, that he would actually benefit and could pull it off, I think that it would have to be more like 70% of Republicans. Because if he runs and he does that, and 47% of Republicans oppose it, but they don't just oppose it, they feel like me that this is like irreparable damage to the country and the party for doing it, then it's not going to work. That 47% are going to convince the rest, too many of the 53, that it's bad and kill it. So you would have to have a bigger margin than that. It's too controversial. When you have a controversial issue like that, the polling tends to come in, right? So in that situation, if it was a 50-50, there'd be too much of a risk of them convincing more Republicans that it's a bad idea. Well, I'm a little curious that the Treasuries are coming all the way back down despite the CPI. But isn't this like exactly what happened last CPI? Isn't this like exactly what happened last CPI? Because we're like, yep, you see, there's no inflation. This is good. We can cut interest rates. And then these people that are concerned about inflation or whatever just like doubled down on their bets. I don't know. Is the difference between 113.12 and 113.24 that big of a difference anyways? I guess not. The amounts that we're moving here are tiny. And what happens, the volatility structure right now is really wild too, because today it was relatively high. Wednesday it's relatively high. And then Monday and Tuesday it's unusually low. Monday and Tuesday will be difficult trading. Although I have to say, on this move here, I never explicitly we didn't talk about it. Uzi's probably sitting over there like in some trade and is like, you're missing it, Seth, whatever. But when I come in and see this, I was kind of like, I don't know what you do with that. So, because we stepped in like around here, right? I saw it come to that line and to that line, and I was kind of like, I do think, by the way, while I'm thinking about it, one of the things that I'm kind of an issue that I'm noticing about this is you get two lines because you got the regular session and the extended session, and then you've got two lines in all four of the instruments, right? So if you're looking at upside lines, you're actually talking about 16 levels. Then it shouldn't be surprising that you see activity that seems like reactions to one of those pretty much every day. But the question would still have to be, you would have to be able to predict which of those lines it's actually going to hold it, right? Oh, did the indicator actually work? Now that's interesting. But it is different from what you plot. How different? By a few ticks or a meaningful amount? I must be doing something wrong. Few ticks. It's like one tick would be okay, but like more than one tick, I kind of feel like we need to sort out what the deal is. You still think it's a rounding thing? Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, like you have the code. You can look at the math, right? Well, there's a lot going in there, but you'll find the math section. Hold on a second. I need to roll my back here. Let's see. I was going to look into it more on the weekend, but I got a busy weekend, so I'll let you know if you get it. Okay. Well, so the plan is I'm going to spend today, weekend, and Monday studying. I'll be busy with an interview on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I will spend more time trying to automate grabbing the number, grabbing the volatility expected number, and then I'm going to put together a XGBoost algorithm to combine that and the market order imbalance on ES. Really something relatively naive, but that we think should perform reasonably okay. And then try running that on the VPS for a week. So I think if I free up next week, I can do all of that. And on the programming on the trading GUI side, I did the things that I was like most interested in. Actually, we can look here real quick. Do I still have? Yes, I do. GUI. Yes, here we go. GUI doc. FE flex. There was another library like eGUI tiles that was kind of a competitor. Oh, it is eGUI doc is the competitor. demo here. See, I think EGUI tiles is kind of more what I want, but it seems like it is too immature. That. But I do want something that's like an actual grid. Can I ask about your background? What did you study? Okay, so I am, what my story is basically I'm a computer guy. I have been obsessed with computers since I was like 3 years old. I'm 40 now. Okay, so, and I really wanted to make video games. So I went to school for computer science to learn how to make video games. And there was a couple of things that happened. One of them was that the senior project that we did, they didn't pick the game that I really wanted to do. And I kind of felt like it didn't go very well, like that they didn't finish the game, and I was kind of frustrated with some of the team people for that. And then also like Zynga guys came over and wanted to hire interns, and they wanted you to have like 2 game projects that you've already done and all of this crazy stuff for them to basically pay you minimum wage. And I'm like, holy crap. Too many people want to do video games, and it's not a good market. And at the same time, the 2008 crisis was happening, and I became obsessed with the market. So I went and worked for a bank. I said, well, I should try. It's too late for me to change and become like a professional finance professional or go into investment banking or something, but I can still work in tech for a bank. So I only submitted one resume to one of the big banks, and I got hired. And I think back on that and I'm like, I don't know how I did that. That was kind of crazy, but that's what happened. So I worked there for a long time, 6 or 7 years, learned a lot. And I did have some opportunities to talk to traders, but it was like, too many complicated things for them to tell me. So basically they just told me, instead of teaching me everything, they told me where to find the information instead. So when I left the firm, I just kind of started learning on my own. And eventually when the information came along, like I knew exactly what I was looking for and learned it on my own. So that's essentially how I became a day trader. I do think to some extent when this started, I knew that day trading was hard and that I was unlikely to make money from doing it. But I think I was in denial about some of the more unsavory fundamentals of how this works. I don't know if I would have been as, gung-ho about, trying as hard at it as I possibly could had I known from the beginning. But kind of what happened along the way was I made the YouTube channel, because there was to be like a trading journal. And when I did the YouTube channel, like way more people signed up, subscribed at the very beginning than I expected. It was like 100, 200 people at first, and I was like, what? And then like it kept getting bigger. Like the night that the Bitcoin futures ran, I was able to live stream for the first time, and we had 5,000 people on the live stream. It was like crazy. And so the YouTube channel building and everything that I learned from doing the YouTube channel has kind of put me in a place where, I can keep going. And, when otherwise I don't know if I would have been able to, So I don't think that I have any intention of ever becoming a full-time day trader. I think I like doing computer science stuff too much. So, and day trading income and everything is like way too. I could see a situation where the YouTube channel becomes popular enough that I spend time that I make content full time and I have employees that help me. But otherwise, I will probably always keep doing the day job. And instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to, keep expanding things, like manage a larger long-term portfolio of stocks and take more swing trades, run more strategies live and things like that. So that's kind of the direction I want to take things. Of course, I think part of me is feeling a certain way because like I'm super hopeful about the job that I'm currently interviewing for. So I don't know. It's so rough because if I don't get it, I'm gonna be devastated for a couple of days, right? Like, and it's hard to like put myself out there like that, but it's just undeniable that I want this one more than any of the other jobs that I've applied for during this whole odyssey. It's just between the company itself and the position that it is. I think it fits me perfectly and everything, and is what I really want to do. So I think I stand a really good chance of getting that one. And then we go in that direction. Okay. If we don't get that one, well, I could be very much looking at another 3-month stint of basically, having to live as cheap as I possibly can, because there might not be more jobs until January, February, right? And then I might have to, I will be shifting a little bit more towards what can we do to bring in income through the channel right now, rather than focusing more on how can I increase my investing, right? So I don't know. We'll see. But I think either way, the funny thing is they gave me this VPS. Oh my gosh, it was some of the people that we work with are so generous, because it was like, oh well, these guys from tradingvps.io wanted us to do an affiliate link, which is cool. I don't do affiliate links for indicators, chat rooms, or cryptocurrency stuff, but that just doesn't fit into any of those categories, and I think is like right down our alley anyways, right? Doing more algorithmic stuff. So but they were like, oh no, you just post a video, or not a video, just just post the link in your Discord, is what they were interested in. But I was like, oh, we should make a video. And like so far it's coming along, and he gave us a VPS to work with, and for like a month or whatever. And then I was like, oh, I don't have any way to get data without disrupting what I do on my machine. So that's this is actually a really interesting thing with the trading VPS. Oh, let me tell you what, it's changing my opinion on things. It's seriously changing my opinion on things, because one of the issues that we have is you want to more seriously do futures trading, right? But all you got is a laptop, or like you have to build a desktop computer and get all of this equipment and stuff, and that's kind of rough for people, right? But what I'm realizing now is, for all of those people that aren't computer nerds and always have a top of the line computer anyways, because they love it for video games and everything else that they do, it maybe makes more sense to just pay $50 a month or whatever it is for a trading VPS, and you get a system that has the computing power for it. And then all you have to worry about is having like a basic laptop and put the money into these things like this, the 4-monitor laptop dock that I reviewed a couple of months ago. because that's not cheap. That's like $600, right? But that and a cheap laptop and then a VPS is probably cheaper than building a whole new, especially when you factor in graphics cards. Holy crap, right? And if you do a trading VPS, you're not going to trade on your machine because you can't connect twice. You can't have two connections. You have to have the professional fee, right? So if I were to regularly do this, I would probably have to switch to doing everything on the trading VPS and only opening NinjaTrader on the trading VPS. Isn't that interesting? Well, anyways, in the meantime, like I didn't really have any way for me to get data to NinjaTrader 8.1 on the trading VPS, so I asked them, and they gave me demo data until like next June. Like, it's like, oh, dude, I was just expecting 2 weeks, but thanks. So, I think that we should be able to do some fun stuff with that. I just got to buckle down and... You know, the funny thing about it is that it was always time. It was always, I didn't have enough time to do the things. And now what I'm finding is I have more time, but I don't have the focus or the energy. Like, I want to put, like, not having a day job is such a drain on my focus and energy that I always do that first, and then if I can work on the other stuff afterwards, then I do. And that's kind of what's happened. I've only had like one good day to work with this stuff. Well, and the one day that I did, I was kind of like, didn't like the what I came away with. So the issue with Doc here is that it does not have a grid. Kind of feel like it could combine them, but well, maybe we can ask ChatGPT. For our trading GUI built in Rust using the eGUI. Right now, neither eGUI tiles nor eGUI dock is designed to give you precise grid alignment and resizing experiences. Yeah. They're focused on dockable panels, not layout grids. Oh, eGUI grid is not on my list here. Let's see. Oh my gosh, you hallucinated it, ChatGPT. Is that for president? I don't know if I would make a good president, to be honest with you. Well, I could. but I do not have the experience necessary to know if I would be. I think we find Seth is pretty good at strategic thinking, and Seth is pretty good at mentoring people and being like the leader on the ground. So I think I can do a pretty good job at being like what they call a middle manager, right? Or a staff engineer is kind of a little bit more of a technical leadership role, is kind of the jobs that I'm trying to get right now. But then the next step up is like director level leadership, right? All the way to executive level leadership. And I don't think that we know enough to know if I would actually be good at that or not. But I would think that it would be difficult for me to become to do well politically or be president. Man, that sucks. Did it really? They say that it's by the same guy, but they just totally made that up. ChatGPT, you liar. If you are president, please let me know in advance when you're... So we need to get like contacts with congressmen and everything so we can get in on the insider trading. Right? That's the real edge. Table builder, is this also? Okay, that's real. That's interesting. Oh, wait. It maybe does actually exist? EGUI grid is a crate. Where is the repo? Aha. Well, I don't think that they have a demo, unfortunately. Okay, well. I think that's what I need. So that'll be the next thing that I try. But I thought that we could try it right now, but they don't have like a demo, so I would have to figure out how to get that into my current GUI, which would be a little bit of a pain in the ass. So it's, like getting anything in Rust to work like that takes me like an hour, oftentimes. I don't know if I want to jump into that rabbit hole right now. Oh, you know what we should have been doing this whole time, guys? I'm so stupid. We should be checking up on Beyond Meat. Really, I was like looking at it because we talked about it yesterday, but you know, I researched it a little bit more yesterday, and I'm realizing that like, holy crap, we should have been like all Beyond Meat focused the whole week, because that is really taken off in a serious way. BYND, huh? Get rid of the range estimate here. Oh, they're actually not doing all that much today. That's interesting. So they were all saying like, oh yeah, the options are going to expire and then it's really going to go, like they're going to have to cover and all this nonsense. I don't think so. It still looks, I mean, the whole thing is just bonkers. Because I remember, well, let's come back to a daily chart. Oh, wow. I remember when it first came out. I remember it being a big deal during the 2020 market, right? And then, yeah, especially when 2022 came along, they just got pummeled. And I had kind of left it for dead too. So that whole thing is kind of like, whoa. But apparently, they were over 100% short. So, like, these guys absolutely had the right idea. There was absolutely reason to be coming in and like, buying it up and squeezing it. I don't know if they can actually get it to squeeze more. Especially since we're already, like, an hour into the session and it still looks just dead. That looks to me like something that's fizzling out. Too bad we don't have it, because this would be the perfect opportunity to be looking at the order flow of it. Right, if we could see what it was doing in the order flow, that might give us some hints. I think I'm just going to have to chalk that one up to we missed the opportunity. Gotta close some windows now. Okay, let's keep that one. I can get rid of that. That. Okay. Ah, so let's see here. They did bounce in the treasuries, did they? Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. Except for that they didn't really, it wasn't all buy. There was actually a pretty big sell right in here. That's interesting. Does anyone else feel AI is making them a faster typist but a dumber developer? No. I think a lot of people use it wrong. I'm just thinking here. If there's anything else? We got 30 minutes. It's kind of funny. Again, it was like it used to be, oh, we don't have enough time, and now sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we have plenty of time now. This is great. It's so funny. Bitcoin has taken a little bit of a drop here. Nothing like crazy, but I do find it curious. I think that, like, bigger picture, it's not a huge deal. Like, here it is on a larger time frame chart. You just can kind of see they're pointed down at the moment. But it's just curious because I don't really see anything else doing anything like that. It's just explicitly coming down. What's with that? I'm also not sure what to think about the treasuries here and where they're at. Just refresh this in a second. Yeah, didn't change anything. There was some big absorption in ES. ES does kind of look like it could be coming to a decision point here. You think AI will make developers obsolete in 2 years? It'll reach general intelligence and eat every ounce of human efficiency? Well, you want to talk about this? Let's talk about this. We got 30 minutes. So again, when we're talking about making predictions, oftentimes the predictions that we want to make are not specific enough. So let's bring a window over here. So the prediction that you want to make here is AI will make human developers obsolete in 2 years. Okay, well, there's a lot of checkpoints that you have to reach before that. There are also things that we need to understand about our systems to be able to predict how that will affect those systems. Okay. So the first one that I want to point out, and this should always be your fundamental basis whenever we're talking about anything to do with the economy. Okay. And it is markets are an information sharing mechanism. Okay. The reason capitalism has been as successful as it is because markets generate information in the form of price about the current supply and demand. that would not otherwise exist. And having that data allows us to avoid bottlenecks caused by severe imbalances between supply and demand. So in a communist economy, for instance, if the harvest is going bad that year, that means that prices are going to go up, right? Because there's not enough wheat being made to make bread. In communism, what happens is the insiders, the people that know this, they go, oh no, well, I better go and buy bread. And then they just buy out all of the bread in the stores, right? And since the price is not determined by supply and demand, it's just, there's no bread. And only the rich people get it. Or the people that are, quote unquote, in the know, right? Whereas in a capitalist economy, you say, oh, the harvest is going to be bad. The farmer will go and hedge themselves for that. And, or the person making the bread will hedge themselves for that, right? They'll go and they'll buy the future so that as the price of wheat goes up, they still have it at the low price, right? So, and as they do so, that information that the harvest might be bad gets input into the price, and the price changes because of that, right? So you have to have these transactions to generate that information. So this is very, very important. Everybody thinks that capitalism is about making people efficient. I'm not so sure that that's the case. It seems that what happens is that when you have a big bottleneck, it's like such, like just think about everything that's happened from COVID, right? Doesn't it kind of feel like it should still be 2021 in some respects? Well, that's because the disruption caused by COVID disrupted our lives so much that we all feel like we've lost 5 years. Right? Now imagine you lived in an economy where stuff like that happened every other month. That's what communism was like. That's what held people back in communism. I actually think from some of the things that I've seen and some of the stories that I've read, that people were more productive under communism than under capitalism in some respects. Like, if you go and watch the HBO series Chernobyl, I think it like shows that really, really well. That like especially the working class people like really believed in what they were doing and took their roles seriously and tried to work hard. But the bureaucracy just undid all of their efforts. Right? Okay. So keep that in mind. What are these checkpoints that we have to think about when we're talking about AI? Okay. So the first one is AI increases efficiency. Okay. So right now, it's looking like AI could increase efficiency 20 to 40%. Okay. This is like, we're already basically at this goalpost. So at this goalpost, AI is fundamentally changing the relationship that we have with some kinds of work, but it doesn't necessarily replace us. You still need people, and probably as many people, dealing with that thing, but it does make them more efficient. Okay. The next step here is AI is cost efficient. I'm not quite sure how to put this one without it sounding like the previous checkpoint. But like right now, you can use AI and it makes you more efficient. But you're being subsidized. Like you're not paying the full cost of that compute. So can AI actually scale in a way that it's actually cost efficient and is genuinely better than people? Actually, let's put it this way. AI can do everything we can. Okay. So this is a place where, okay, even if the AI can write code just like I can, right? That doesn't necessarily mean we're there, because it also has to be cost efficient, right? So this one, I'm really skeptical about this one, to be honest. I don't see, like, when you start to look at like the properties of matter and things like that, I don't see how do you get compute to be more efficient than the human, because they're spending insane amounts of resources to train and develop these models. And it can't do things that you can, just the human. The biological computer is more efficient. And I'm not sure you can ever get to that point where the AI is more cost efficient than the human without the AI also running on a biological computer of some sort. Okay. So there's that. The next gate here is AI actually replaces us. Okay. Because there could be a scenario where the AI can do everything we can, and the AI is cost efficient and everything, but like the Luddites win and just ban AI, right? That could happen. So there's another checkpoint, is that the point where the AI actually is replacing people, right? Then the next step is, does UBI get implemented? Is UBI effective? Are the other kind of checkpoints here? Because really what people are talking about is like, how is this going to affect? Everybody seems to think that this will take us to a place where we have universal basic income. I really think of all of these. Oops. Of all of these, this is the least likely. But all of the systems that we have are basically explicitly set up to like work against a basic universal income. And the whole thing with our economy is that we kind of already have something that serves the same purpose, but is frankly more flexible and more effective. We don't have a basic universal income, but we can print money. We do have interest rates and we provide loans. And so anybody can go and print money. It's just you have to create like a business plan and a justification that you're going to be able to pay it back. And that's the mechanism that it ensures that when we print money, that more of that money goes towards productive use. If you just give everybody basic, money across the board, you have no control over how they spend that money. It's very likely to get wasted. And at that point, if it's just being used to consume, then the most likely consequence of that is that it just causes increased inflation for those goods that people are using. Like, you give people basic universal income so that they can pay their rent, and then rent's going to go up, right? So, UBI very unlikely to get implemented, and if it does get implemented, probably won't be effective. Okay. So then what happens if we get to this one where AI actually replaces us? Questionable. But AI actually replaces us. What kind of a world do we move to? And I think that probably the best model for how that works would be how things work in a family with generational wealth. You're basically talking about humanity itself having generational wealth. So in a family with generational wealth, you get paid, but you don't have a basic universal income. They still attach it to things, right? Like, and how you conduct yourself and your relationship with the family is going to determine how that wealth gets passed on to you, because they have rules to ensure that you will be a good steward of that money and continue it on so that other future generations will also be able to have that wealth. Right? So really what would happen, I think, is that we would move from an economy that is based primarily on labor to a economy that is based primarily on community. That you would be paid for your position and contributions to various communities. Isn't that an interesting way to think of it? But just when I look at the systems involved and everything else like that, I think that that is a much more likely outcome. Now, that's all because, again, markets are an information sharing mechanism. So some people have this idea that we'll just move to communism. Well, that's not going to work because the robots still need to be able to make decisions for us, right? Even if it's all automated. And how are they going to make those decisions if the data that they need to make those decisions doesn't even exist? And how does that data get made? It's through the transactions. So you would still have an economy. You would still buy things. It's just that the mechanism through which you interact with that market the most would probably shift from one where you're primarily providing your labor to one that is kind of more the world that the rich people already live, where you're primarily being paid for your relationships and your contributions to communities. Make sense? Now, with all of that, going back though to kind of the place, I really think that we're only going to get to here. I think that AI is going to increase efficiency 20 to 40%. I think that the AI is definitely going to get better and less error prone. One of the things that I've seen is that if I tell AI to write me a shell script that does a certain thing, it's just phenomenal. It usually does a really good job at getting me that thing on the first try, especially if it's something that, is probably somebody has done it before, right? It is able to give you a shell script really, really easily. If I ask it to give me something that's a little less common, like if I ask it to write REST code for me, it's terrible at REST code. On a lot of the things that I do in DevOps, it's terrible with. Because there's not any reinforcement learning. Like the way that that Claude is so good at coding is in their training, they have all of these tests that are like, okay, when you're doing Python, when you get an input like this, it needs to look like this so that you avoid this particular issue, right? They have training specifically for Python and shell scripts and command line commands, especially command line commands, because that's the primary way through which the LLMs interact with things to be able to do stuff in an automated fashion. So in order to really get AI that's like super effective at everything, you would have to train it on all of that, which is hard to do for every tiny little thing. And then there would have to be the data. Like there are some things that like people know that aren't written down, or like somebody has to have said it on the internet for it to know. Right? So number one, just because of the way that we train LLMs, because LLMs don't actually think in the way that we do in terms of like us calculating and using logic and things like that. They are ultimately predicting tokens, and everything that the LLM outputs has basically already been baked into the model. So if you don't have the data, you don't have the way to bake that particular thing into the model, you're just not going to be able to get it out of the model. Not without them adding another layer that does deep logical thinking, which they haven't really done. They've got like these train of thought ones, but there's flaws. There's like major flaws in that, right? So like that's kind of the limitation on the AIs itself. And I really don't think you get around that without moving to a different technology altogether. But then the other issue is that the problem is not usually that people aren't efficient enough. So, like, again, we have this idea, and I really think it comes from communists, right? People that are really want communism, what they really hate actually is working, right? And they just don't want to have to work anymore, and they don't feel like that they're getting as much out of their labor as they should, is really what it all comes down to. And so they've built this myth that capitalism is really this system that's built around coercing you into being as productive as possible. And what I'm saying is, actually, people could be way, way, way more productive than they are. There's so many things that prevent people at their day job from being productive. The biggest one is them just not being engaged in the work. It's just not something that they care about because they don't benefit from it. They're not interested in it. It's just the way that they make money. Then it's hard for them to stay engaged in that task and do it as effectively as possible, right? Another issue is organizational issues. You're doing things that have to interact with other people and they have different schedules and you're waiting on this other person, or you have this manager that's just absolutely terrible. The biggest bottlenecks that I see in business are really more organizational things. And I think that the reality is we're talking about complex systems again, that there just seems to be like a limitation on how much change a system can handle at any one time. Because I've had many times in my career where I'm just going 1,000 miles an hour and I'm making stuff and I'm, okay, here's this thing, pass it off. Okay, now I've done the next thing. And when I come back, it's like they haven't even done anything with the first one. They've just been sitting on it, right? Like, I can go faster than the organization has the ability to absorb the change. So what does that tell you? Right? Well, number one, the bottleneck in the economy is not necessarily like worker efficiency. Right? And number two, AI does not necessarily get rid of those roadblocks, does it? That's why the most likely change, I think, is that you will see an across the board 20 to 40% increase in efficiency, and that'll be it. And all of these other kind of wider changes like UBI and all that sort of stuff that people think will happen, I think that that's unlikely. But like, here's the thing, is that like this 20 to 40% increase in efficiency is all you need. Like that is really is like insane. That is still the single greatest deflationary force that humans will ever see. A 20 to 40% increase in efficiency because of AI and robotics. That's still enough to make a large, very, very large number of people abundantly wealthy, more money than they would ever be able to use, more money than they and their children and their children's children would ever be able to use. I think that there would probably be definitely like a split economy, like haves and have-nots. People that right now are not really doing well in the economy right now anyways, or would have a very difficult time positioning themselves to take advantage of that efficiency. And I'm sure we'll have to sort things out like that, because it's going to be things like this could still move into a lot of people are just get paid for their position in the community. Like, what's going to happen is you're going to have this class of people that they're making insane amounts of money because of this 20 to 40% increase in AI. Like, just think about it. What do you make right now, right? If you make $100,000, right? And now we have a 40% increase. So you're making $140,000. And there's not like inflation and everything else. So you just have 40% more money. How would that change your life? Like, probably pretty significantly for a lot, especially if you're like at the 100,000 level. Right, because the difference between 100,000 and 140,000 is actually like $2,000 a month, right? And if you're already paying all your bills and everything, like, that's $2,000 a month, okay? So you're going to have this group of like 20% of the economy now that is like either abundantly wealthy or upper class, upper middle class now. You'll have basically an even larger upper middle class. And then what are they at the same time? The cost of everything is going down, especially if they can get to the place where the cost of housing goes down. Because we already, like, even with me, I got in early. The cost of the house is like too much compared to past generations. So if cost was trivial for housing, oh man, now it really, you are getting into a place where, like, yeah, you could work and you could make a relative 200,000, what would be relatively $200,000 a year to you now, but you're single and you don't have any kids, and like, why do you need that? And maybe I will just work 6 months and then take a vacation the rest of the year. Or maybe I will work 5 years and then retire. Right? And you have this big chunk of change, and then, you give some of that to your kids. And then, what if you're like the big executives, right? What are you going to do with all that money? I think you're gonna pay people to be around. You're gonna be like, like if I was a super, super rich guy, like if I was like a Jeff Bezos, right? And I had this huge sprawling mansion, right? That would be like a tiny little town in some respects, right? Like there's going to be a house manager and the gardener and all of these different people that are involved in it, right? And some of these people, I'm going to bring them on and I'm going to give them jobs. Purely because I like them and I want them to be around. Like, they have to have a place. Like, I don't want them to be bored. Like, they have to feel like that they have a place in that community, right? But at that point, you're building a community, right? Community, economy based on community rather than labor. It still happens without any of this stuff. Isn't that interesting? But that's what I think is going to happen. And I'm basing that just off of my understanding of the economy and looking at this, what's most likely to happen. I think that that's the direction that we go. I don't know. Maybe it's affected by my background and things like that, right? Like, I understand capitalism. I'm kind of anti-communism, socialist policies anyways. So, of course, I'm not going to like UBI. And I'm from Utah, and Mormons have this idea of like what life is going to be like in heaven. And so I'm kind of thinking along those lines, because that's kind of what they say, is that like you will still have relationships and with people in heaven and connections to people. So there's actually like a community in heaven, and what does that like? And I'm just thinking, oh, well, okay, we're going to build a community, like the best community that we can here. Can't the economy be based on our community and the connections between each other rather than labor? I think it can be. Because at the end of the day, what makes capitalism effective is the market. And that's just the market in general. If robots take over the labor market, there's still other markets for humans to participate in. That's what I think. Or maybe I should make a TikTok about that, starting from that. It's like, what if robots take over the labor market? Well, there are other markets for humans to interact with. Well, it's getting about time for us to go. I thought you were gonna fight me more along the way on that, but I don't know if you're even still there, Lego. 113.16 seems like a fitting place for them to settle, though, for the week. Where is that relative to where we were at on the volume profile? Yeah, that was kind of where we spent a lot of time on the 17th, so I think it all fits. I think Trump is making another announcement today, isn't he? I don't remember. There's still that whole Canada thing too, is kind of an issue. No, apparently no, that was yesterday. What was the announcement that he did? I didn't even see anything about that. He departs for Malaysia, huh? But I wouldn't discount the possibility of him coming in and doing or saying something that really roils the markets. Especially, like, one of the things that I do think happens is he watches the market and is like, oh wow, we're at a new all-time high. Oh yeah, we are. We're at a new all-time high today. That means that I can say some more crazy things. Right? So be careful. I will see you guys on Monday. I'm gonna do some studying today. So in the meantime, stay excellent, team.